Hello, my name is Michael Lucas Smith. I work for Syncom, and today I'm going to show you Text2, a new text framework for Visualworks and Smalltalk in general, I suppose. You can also use it in Object Studio. So Text2 really picks up where Text1 left off. It is a new model and new set of widgets. And the idea was to integrate all of the different text behavior that we've seen in third-party packages, such as extra emphasis, and put them into the product, but in a way we can support them. But we also wanted to go further than that. We also wanted to go Unicode. We wanted to go multilingual, basically be international as much as we could with this current version. So that's what Text2 is, and what we're looking at right now is a new document editor. This new document editor and all the model behind it is available in Visualworks 7.10 inside the base. So if you want to open up the UI Painter, you can make one of these. And we're going to do that to begin with, just before we get into exploring the different features. Popular. UI Painter. So there are actually three new widgets. One for the document viewer, one for document editor, and one for an input editor. And that's very much like an input field. So we have these three new icons here. This one's got a lock on it, it's the viewer, it's read only, the editor, and a single line editor for the input editor. So adding these things is as simple as any other edit operation. Oops. Except I can't seem to click on this little nubbin today. And we won't go into the details at this point because that will spoil some of the interesting stuff. So there you go. It's as simple as using the regular editor. Right, so this is the examples. The examples are included as well. They're called text2-examples. And you can load them up from a parcel from the examples directory if you've got that stuff installed. We're going to have a look at some of the basic features here. So here we have Welcome to Visualworks 7.10. Let's bold this. So this is not a notepad or text pad or text edit or text mate replacement. It's really just a test harness. So these menus were put here for me to experiment with. So in this case, we're going to bold the font and let's italicize the welcome. Nothing too new or unexpected there so far. And you know, let's make this a different color. Let's go and grab a nice blue. There we go. So welcome to Visualworks. Now this is where we start getting some of the new features that we didn't have before, such as background color. Let's give it a yellow background color. There we go. So there we have it. Now, one of the other things that I always wanted when I was using the old text editor was the ability to have different font sizes in the same line and actually have it work. So let's do that as well. Welcome to Visualworks. Now you see that they share their baseline now, and that's really important because now we can do vertical alignment. Let's put that guy on the top. Welcome to Visualworks. Actually, you know what? Let's just undo that, and we'll put this on the top because that kind of looks neat that way. There we go. Welcome to Visualworks 7.10. So now we're starting to get into the territory of new features. What else can we do that we couldn't do before? Well, we can actually change what font we're using as well. So if we select that and pick a different font family, I'm going to pick Arial. Okay, that didn't look any different at all. Let's try something a little bit more interesting. And Dal Mono, there we go. So we actually have a lot of control over the typography now, which is really nice. We can also do more interesting things. So let's select that and we'll add an annotation. Releasing on an internet near you soon. There we go. Now what that does is it lets a hover help appear when you move over that. So you normally see this in like word processors as revision notes or just extra information, or if you want to track changes. So one idea I had at one point was if multiple people are editing the method at the same time, you could annotate which parts of the method they've individually edited. That's not something we're actually going to do, it's just an idea. Now let's try and do something like make the welcome into an action. Let's go dialogue on, no, we'll say welcome. So that should allow me to click on this, and there we go, we popped up a dialog. So we have the capabilities of doing hyperlinks, interactive content, the actions themselves could actually edit the document, which allows for some interesting possibilities as well. New other features. Let's go and insert an image. Oh, that's a tiny little image. Let's get a big image. There we go. A big image. We've still got that background color. Let's get rid of that background color. There we go. So this shares with the text as well. Okay, there we have it. So let's click into that, steal that style, and put that back on the baseline. Okay, well, I have to play with that a little bit more. So now we have the ability to have images in here as well. Oh, you know, it's time for a new document because we're copying the styles around everywhere. Let's put that big image back in there. Now we're going to try and experiment with the lists. So as well as images, we've also got the ability to add lists. So let's start with the bulleted list. We can now have lists. Pressing enter gives you a new list item. New list item. Shift enter gives you a new line within that paragraph list item. A new line. Right, so now let's make this a sublist. Just pressing tab gives me that sublist. Shift tab takes it back. Sublist. Now maybe we don't want that particular styling. So let's insert a different list. Roman numerals. That sounds good. Oh, I think I'm already using Roman numerals. Let's undo that and add in a different one. Katakana. That's good. Japanese numbering. List items. There we go. So we have a lot of different list item styles. I only just picked 4 standard, commonly used ones to put into the example editor. Okay, let's have a look at alignment. So in this particular example, we've got the lorem ipsum, of course. You just need some content. Let's shrink the window down so we can see how the dramatic change here. So what we have here is a standard left aligned, then we have center aligned, like so, and then right aligned. And of course, justified, where we get extra spacing between the content to space it out properly. So I like that stuff. We showed vertical alignment before. Indenting. So here we've got a paragraph style that specifies an indent on this edge here, but also a first line indent. So if we make a new paragraph, let's make the window smaller so we don't have to write as much content. This is some new content so that we can see the paragraph line indent. Right. So now we have that. Let's go and edit this paragraph, and we'll change the line indent to 1. And you see that affects that first one there. And if we change the first line indent, we'll make that 50, and that'll push that one out even further. We also have the ability to modify the padding of the paragraph. So let's go padding. Let's go 30 now. That will drastically change the positioning of content between it. The next paragraph. So we see that we've got a big gap between the last and the next paragraph. We also have content direction. Now this could get interesting. If we change the direction of the content, it won't actually do anything. What we're saying is what direction we prefer the content to be. So I just picked right to left, so naturally our alignment swaps. Now that's only going to get interesting when we start playing with multilingual content. So we go back to auto, and it will auto detect which direction the content should go. Now I think if we specifically insert a override selection right to left, now it's forcing that whole group of content there to be in the opposite direction. And then if we can force the direction to be right to left, now we have made English go back to front. And of course this is more interesting when we get into multilingual content, which we're going to do right now. Jumping to multilingual, what we have here is a mixture of English, Arabic and Hebrew. So English here, Hebrew there, English, Hebrew, Hebrew, English, Hebrew. Now the content direction is really important here. We'll have a look at that. Is a content direction scenario. I'm going to stick some brackets there, and inside it we're going to insert the Hebrew sample. And you'll see that the cursor stayed on the left hand side because that's actually the head of right to left content, and it's also the start of left to right content. So if I wrote hello there, then it's on the start. Whereas when I put in the Hebrew content, it went back the other way. So there's a lot here. There's a whole bunch of rules that we've got from Unicode that specify how the numbering systems and content and dashes and all, hyphens, etc. all work. So you can see here that the numbering system in Arabic here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 comes before the word, but in English it comes after. Now if we use the English numbering system, it's still before the word, but the content direction is left to right. So this would be, say, how many chickens do we have, and then the number comes before it. Even though the content is actually still the same as this, we're just changing what words are where, and that's all based on content direction. So the interesting thing is when you start changing the content direction, which is the ability to override in the paragraph the direction of that content. Okay, so moving on. We looked at alignment, we've looked at intent, we've looked at colors. Here's the full color spectrum. That's actually not true. You can put any color value in there that you want. These just are the named colors, so I thought I'll just go and combine all those together. We looked at adornments. No, we didn't look at adornments. Adornments, this is one of the main reasons why people would load extra emphasis before, is to get different kinds of adornments. And we've got standard underline, double underline, jagged, strike through, over the line, and shadow. And we can also specify an independent color for these things. So if we go to adornment and we specify, color, let's make this that color. There we go. So now we have that. This is useful for the jagged underlines, which is typically red or green depending on whether you're doing spell checking or grammar checking. But it's also useful for other sort of visual hints. And strike through is good when you want to indicate that you don't want that content anymore. And shadow, let's pick a different color for that. And adornment color, we'll go for a dark gray. Here we go, it's classic shadow right there. So those are adornments. Next up, we have the annotations and actions, which we looked at. Vertical alignment we looked at. Here's just a sample of fonts on the same line. Font support for multilingual content differs from platform to platform, and we found in our testing that going back to older platforms like older Linuxes and older versions of Windows, some of the multilingual content just doesn't work. Like there will be missing characters. You can actually get fonts that improve the support, but then you also miss out on the ability to have direction overriding, things like back to front English. In fact, I think we had an example of back to front. Yeah, there we go, English there, and in here, back to front Hebrew as well. Yes, this guy right here is back to front Hebrew. Okay, so fonts, lists. I think this is a bigger set of lists, yeah, like so. Now if we just grab all the content, we can start playing with double clicks, and that selects by word, or triple click selects by sentences. And depending on the platform, the Windows and Mac OS X behave differently for right-click menus. If I right-click onto a word on Mac, it will select it, unless I'm right-clicking where the cursor is. This is very different behavior to Windows, where Windows won't move the cursor or selection at all, ever. And it's very interesting to note those differences and to replicate them in our behavior. So we can also play with some settings. We can turn off the word wrapping, which makes us some very interesting content here. And so scroll this stuff around, like so. Put that word wrapping back on so we don't go insane. And we can also make the whole thing read only, so now I can't type. I'm hitting my keyboard loudly so you can hear. Things like copy and paste and etc. are no longer there. Turn off the read only. We have the input cursor blinking. We can actually turn that guy off. So now we can still edit, but we can't see the input cursor. And similarly, let's turn that one back on, but turn off selection. So here I've selected an area and I can do a full replace, and I can't actually see that selection. So there we have that. Drawing line numbers. This is useful for some circumstances. It's not so much for Smalltalk coding because our methods tend to not be very long, but when you start editing documents, sometimes it's useful to have that numbering there. Line striping. This is a much requested feature, being able to have alternate lines use a different background color, and you can specify what kind of color you're using on it. Let's turn these guys off. And hidden characters. These are the new lines and the tabs. In fact, if we go down to the lists, we should be able to see some tabs somewhere. Oh, well, let's just type some tabs in. Here is a tab. Tab stops work, as we can see. So here we have a subtle little green indicator for new lines and tabs, and there are also indicators for direction markers in the multilingual. And in the particular example, I also turn on double buffering, just in case that's something that you need to reduce flickering. A lot of people turn this on in their applications by default. We're looking into ways in future versions of VisualWorks to not require this. We'll see. Just a quick relayout test to make sure everything stays exactly the way it was. And to finish off, I'm going to add a hat. Oh, actually, I just replaced it. So inserts, the hat. I want to put it on there. My keyboard doesn't have a key for adding hats. And let's see, let's add hats on hats. This is a curious little behavior we discovered, that you can just continually add hats on hats on hats. But yeah, it's not fairly typical. So there we have the basic explanation of all the different new functionality. And what we can do now is look underneath the hood. And we're going to do that by starting at the widget level. Move this over here, we'll push this over to there. Okay, so like any other view, you can see it in the little preview here, nothing too special about that. Inside this guy is the document that we're editing. Sorry, my computer's running a little bit slow with the compression. And here in this section, we're using the old text widget, and we can start to see where things break down there. And if we go down to the multilingual content, we'll see that things really start to break down. It's drawing in the wrong direction. In this particular case, it's not too bad with measuring the text, but actually we can compare it side by side. See this word here is expanded out to this mess here, which is just purely incorrect. So this is the big difference between the new text widgets and the old text widgets when it comes to multilingual content. So there we have our document. We're going to open that up over here to have a look inside it. It looks like any other piece of text, but when we go into basic, this is where we start to see a difference. First off, we have a Unicode properties. This guide describes all the algorithms that you can use on it, and such as finding paragraph breaks, line breaks, grapheme breaks. Graphemes are the combining marks that are all combined together. Tab characters, word breaks, sentence breaks as well. All the delimiters that we can break on, and bidirectional content capabilities. Every document has this, and that's important. In the Unicode specification, it says that you should allow people to override this behavior. Southeast Asian languages, for instance, some of them have localized rules for how words break up. And those aren't covered in the Unicode spec, but there's a room there for someone to make a subclass of Unicode properties and define their own capability. Now, the document itself is broken up into sections of styling. So we have the word alignment, and that's the very first thing in our document. As you can see here, alignment, like so. If we go and look inside that, we'll see that it has an offset and a size, and a source. So this source string could be a 10 gigabyte virtual string off disk, for all we know. The way the document is built up is by references into other objects, plus a style. And so the style is also another interesting thing here. It's actually a defined style. You can make subclasses and add your own styles and alter the renderer to lay out and render things differently if required. But we went with a sort of a webby CSS approach here. Not so much the cascading, but a style, a set, and with defined styles. So these are all specified here. You can change that. You can hold on to a style object and use that in your menus. I think we'll find that the rest of this document is similar. If we could find the image, it's all coloring. Where is the image? Images come at vertical alignment. So if we can see if we can find that content. Aha, here we go, image. If we come into here, we don't have a document span, we actually have a document image. And it points to an image. It masquerades as a certain kind of character, and this is the graphical embedding character in Unicode. And that's important because how a word line breaks, whether it's a new line, whether it joins letters together, all that kind of stuff, they're Unicode properties, and they're gathered from the characters and the Unicode database. And of course the document image also has a style. So that's the way the documents are put together. And if we look at the method that drives all this stuff, we have modifying, replace, between, and with. So this is a start and stop position between characters and a replacement. Now with this you can do inserts, deletes, and replaces. So all three major edits, which makes doing the undo and redo stack really very simple. We also have the ability to search the document for all the different kinds of breaks, such as the graphing, line, new line, paragraph, sentence, and word. And just regular access methods like before, add, put, various testing methods for those break positions, and enumeration, which allows you to go through the segments or just treat it like a regular collection with a do. So that's the basic crux of the model underneath. Things get more interesting when we go and look at how that's laid out. And the layout's done with a flow object. Flow object here is currently showing the different lines. Put that up here, I think. And lines by number. These are all the different lines that we have in our rendering. So if we select that, we can see all this information. And it's including line number, ID, and Y coordinate offsets, and then the content printed out in a fashion. Just something useful so that we can debug things when they don't go right. The device is really important. It's either the screen or the printer or something else. And that's how fonts are actually found. So every flow is actually built up from a document, a device, and a page extent. Page extents, they can actually be infinite on X and Y. But if you have word wrapping, then the X width for the page extent is the wrapping width. And the page extent is the height of a page. So that's useful when you're doing printing as well, because you end up with another structure here, lines by page. If we look at this guy, we see we actually have 4 pages of content based on that page extent. Now, by default, the document editor widget gives the page extent based on the widget bounds. But it doesn't actually use the paging information. That's something left there for people to use if they want to print by page. We also have lines by paragraph start. This is how we get into the content quickly when we're doing edits. And also lines by top. This is their Y coordinate. And finally lines by width. Now this is primarily used to answer the question, how big are we? All this information is kept up to date as edits are done. And the way that's done is by mimicking the modification API of document here on flow. So any change you make on the flow is done on the document, and the flow itself is updated to reflow the content with a minimal set of changes. The flow itself is very configurable. These are the different flow segment classes when we transform a document image into a flow image, document list item into a list item. We have a bunch of rules on how we break up content. So we've got tabs, new lines, white space, and direction markers. And we also have the standard flow class. This is the guy that is used for all the rest of the content. You can replace this with flow password, and that will turn the content into password masking, which will allow editing, but you won't be able to actually see the content. So that's flow. Flow is built up from paragraphs. In fact, if we look at one of these lines, let's just grab line 8. It will have a paragraph that defines its range, like so, and also the bounds of the entire paragraph. That's the way the layout works, is it breaks up the content into paragraphs and then breaks up the paragraph into I guess, small segments, and then it lays out those segments into lines, and at the end of the day we end up with the lines. All of that is configurable and customizable with subclassing or etc. The widget finally is constructed of those two things, plus an input cursor and an anchor cursor. So this is where you start a selection, and this is where the cursor currently is. It also has an animation for the blinking of the cursor. So if you come over here, you'll see that we actually have a blinking cursor. That's not something we ever had before in the text editor. We also have the ability to configure a menu, margins of the widgets. It also has the undo and redo stack. So if we have a look at the undo history here, various things that we've typed and done to the document, like so, and that allows us to undo them. This is all the hats. This was us typing with tabs. I believe this might have been a delete. If we look at the start and the stop, I know it's just a style change. We did a style change there. And then the redo is the opposite of that. That's to redo things that you have undone. And that puts the widget together. Now, the last part of the widget that's worth noting is the use of the new UI view event controller. And this has all the bindings and actions. And those are based off keyboard commands and mouse events. And it also allows the state to be configurable. If you wanted to add a new mode of operation to the text editor, you can add an action that will change the state to a state that is bound to different events. And we can see that in the event bindings. When we are active, that's what these different things are, character mappings. And same with the actions. When we are active, these are the different message channels and actions that we do. For example, okay, let's look at copy. Copy will have a receiver of the document editor, clipboard copy, and there we go. So that's the way this stuff is put together. Red pressed event is in here as well. So that would be the left click, mouse left down. And that allows you to completely customize an individual widget however you need to do. There's also a settings collection or dictionary with all the various settings that we put in here, plus some hidden ones that you can find on your own if you want to explore, that allow you to change foreground color, background color, and display some other interesting debug information if required. That's the gist of it. All of this stuff has documentation, API, and there's quite a lot there. It is a big change from the old text system, and I hope you all find it really interesting and can use it in your products. There will be more to come. We are intending to use this new text editor as the text editor for code editing. And that means we're also looking at doing autocomplete. We're looking at doing suggestions, automatic suggestions for refactorings, syntax code highlighting built into the product instead of having to load up unsupported goodies. And a whole bunch of other stuff we've been looking at too with the text editor, such as the way we deal with breakpoints and things like that. So I hope you've enjoyed this introduction to the text editor, and happy hunting.